There is a word you can still hear in Japan today, hōgan-biiki. It is 800 years old, and people use it without thinking. It means to take the side of the one who is going to lose, to love someone more, not less, because you know they are doomed. The strange part is that this word is a name. It belonged to a real man, and no one is entirely sure how his story ended. You have probably seen his face without knowing it, a slender figure on a kabuki stage, leaping across a bridge. A hero in 100 later tales, drawn again and again, always young, always beautiful, always about to be betrayed. He is the reason a whole nation learned to root for the beautiful loser. But before he was a legend, before the plays and the puppets and the word that outlived him, he was a boy no one expected to survive. And to understand why his last hours still ache, you have to walk backward, away from the stage, past the stories, into a snow-covered valley in the far north on a morning in the spring of 1189. Start here, in the present, with the ghost he became. For centuries, Japanese audiences could not accept that he simply died, so they invented escapes. One legend says he never fell at all, that he slipped away to the northern island of Azo, what you now call Hokkaido. Another version, wilder still, carries him across the sea and onto the plains of the Asian mainland, where he supposedly took a new name and became Genghis Khan.
That last story is pure fantasy, invented much later, and no serious historian believes a word of it. But ask yourself why a people would need such a story at all. Why invent an escape for a man who was already dead? Step back further, into the Edo period, 2 and 3 centuries after he lived. Here his name is everywhere. Playwrights build entire dramas around his fall. Storytellers weave a chronicle called the Gikkeiki, the record of Yoshitsune, half history and half poetry, that fixes his image forever as the graceful, wronged young warrior. In these stories, he is never alone. Beside him stands a giant, a warrior monk named Benkei, said to have carried a naginata and the strength of 10 men who swore to follow Yoshitsune to the end. Whether Benkei was truly the mountain of a man the tales describe, we cannot know. The legend grew far beyond the record. But the bond at the center of it, the loyalty that would not break, even when everything else did, that was the part audiences came back for. Hold that image, a doomed lord, and the one man who would not leave him. You will need it soon. Now go back further, past the plays, to the man himself. His name was Minamoto no Yoshitsune, born in the year 1159, and he was born into the losing side of a war.
His father was killed when Yoshitsune was an infant. His clan, the Minamoto, was crushed by their rivals, the Taira. By all rights, the child should have been killed too. Instead, he was spared and sent to a mountain temple to become a monk. Picture that. A boy meant to disappear into prayer, growing up in the shadow of a family that had been all but erased. He was not supposed to matter. That is where almost every version of his life begins, and it is the first thing that makes people love him. But he did not stay in the temple. In 1180, his half-brother raised the Minamoto banner again and called their scattered clan to war against the Taira. That half-brother was named Minamoto no Yoritomo. Remember that name above all others. Yoritomo was older, colder, a patient organizer of men who ruled from the eastern base of Kamakura and rarely rode to battle himself. Yoshitsune was the opposite. He went to the front. And in the space of only a few years, this temple boy turned out to be one of the most gifted battlefield commanders Japan had ever produced. What he did next is written into the chronicles, not the legends. At Ichi-no-Tani in 1184, he is said to have led a cavalry charge down a slope so steep his enemies thought no horse could descend it, and shattered the Taira from a direction they never guarded. The following year, at the sea battle of Dan-no-ura in 1185, the Minamoto fleet cornered the last of the Taira.
The Taira were destroyed, their child emperor drowned.
A war that had torn Japan apart for 5 years was over, and the man who had won the final victories was Yoshitsune, 26 years old, the most celebrated warrior in the land. This should be the happy ending. It is instead the exact moment his death begins. Because victory made him dangerous, not to his enemies, to his own brother. Yoritomo was building something no one had ever built in Japan, a government of warriors that would rule for the next 7 centuries. And a government cannot have a rival hero the whole country adores, especially not a younger brother who wins wars on his own initiative and accepts honors from the imperial court without asking permission first. That, more than any battlefield, is what turned Yoritomo against him. Yoshitsune won the war. Yoritomo intended to win the peace. There was no room in it for both of them. Have you ever done everything right and been punished precisely for succeeding? The chronicle that tells us most of this is the Azuma Kagami, the Mirror of the East, compiled under the Kamakura government that Yoritomo founded. It is not a neutral witness. It was written by the winning side. But even that hostile record shows the shape of what happened. Yoshitsune, suddenly a fugitive, hunted through the country he had just saved.
He tried to raise support against Yoritomo and failed. His followers scattered. The court that had honored him abandoned him the moment the wind changed. And so the greatest commander of his generation ran north to the one place that might still take him in. That place was Hiraizumi in the deep north, capital of a branch of the Fujiwara family who had built a golden city far from the reach of Kyoto or Kamakura. Their aging lord, Fujiwara no Hidehira, had sheltered Yoshitsune once before when he was a boy. Now he sheltered him again. For a short while, in that remote northern court, with its gold-leafed temple hall glinting against the pines, Yoshitsune was safe. He had a protector powerful enough to defy even Yoritomo. But protectors grow old, and Hidehira was dying. On his deathbed, the old lord did something remarkable. He gathered his sons and made them swear to defend Yoshitsune, to make the young general their commander and hold the north together around him. It was, in effect, a father's last order, and it lasted only as long as the father's breath. Hidehira died. His son, Fujiwara no Yasuhira, inherited both the domain and the promise. And Yoritomo, now the most powerful man in Japan, sent word north with a simple, crushing choice. Kill the man your dying father told you to protect, or be destroyed along with him.
What would you have done, standing where Yasuhira stood, with your family's survival in one hand and your father's last wish in the other? Yasuhira chose survival. In the spring of 1189, he broke the oath. He sent his soldiers against the residents at the Koromo River, the Koromogawa, where Yasuhira was living with his few remaining retainers, his wife, and their small child. This is the moment everything has been walking toward, the last hours. The great commander who had never lost a battle, cornered at last, not by the enemy he had beaten, but by the ally he had trusted, on the order of the brother he had fought for. What happened inside that residence, we know mostly in outline, and the rest belongs to legend. The historical record is brief and grim. Yasuhira's small band was overwhelmed. Understanding there was no escape, he is said to have withdrawn into an inner chamber, and there, rather than be taken, he ended his own life. In the tellings that came later, he does it calmly, with his wife and child beside him, while outside his handful of warriors buy him time with their bodies. He was 30 years old, the boy who was never supposed to matter, the general who saved his clan, dead by his own hand in a burning hall in the snow, because he had won too well. Here, the legend adds its most famous image, and you should know it is legend and not fact.
It says that Benkei, the giant warrior monk, stood alone at the gate to hold back the attackers while his lord died in peace within. That he took arrow after arrow and would not fall. That when the soldiers finally dared approach, they found him already dead, still standing, propped upright on his own weapon, guarding a door for a man who no longer needed guarding. The standing death of Benkei. That almost certainly did not happen that way. But ask why it was invented, and you arrive back at the word we began with. A people who could not bear this ending needed at least one man to have refused it.
So did Yoshitsune truly die there, at Kodomorawa, in 1189? This is where the mystery you were promised finally closes, and it closes the way real history usually does, quietly and against our wishes. The Azuma Kagami records that his head was sent south to Yoritomo as proof, preserved and carried for weeks before it arrived. By every serious account, he died in the north that spring, exactly as the hunt intended. The escape to Hokkaido, the leap across the sea, the second life as a conqueror of empires, all of it came centuries later, dreamed up by people who had heard the true story and could not accept it. The mystery was never really about the facts. It was about the refusal. And Yoritomo? He got what he killed for.
Within 3 years, he had crushed the northern Fujiwara too, Yasuhira included, betrayer and all. And in 1192, he took the title of Shogun and founded the military government that would rule Japan, in one form or another, until the 19th century. He won everything. His brother lost everything. And here is the strange final turn. It is the loser the country remembers with love. Yoritomo built an order that lasted 700 years, and most people today could not tell you a single thing he did. Yoshitsune lost and died young and betrayed, and his name became a word for the tenderness you feel toward anyone who is beaten by something larger than themselves. That is what hogan-biiki really carries. Hogan was Yoshitsune's court title. Biiki means to favor, to take the side of. To this day, when a Japanese crowd quietly hopes the underdog wins, when they cheer the smaller team, the doomed effort, the beautiful attempt that cannot succeed, they are speaking his name without knowing it. The next time you catch yourself pulling for the side that is going to lose, feeling that ache that has no clear reason, understand where it comes from. It has a birthplace. A residence by a frozen river in the spring of 1189, where a brother's fear ended the life of the finest warrior Japan ever cheered for. You have felt his story your whole life. Now you know his name.